Welcome to another tzuzamen, Tzip.
Hi, Tzili.
Everybody, Professor Arie Kruglanski.
Oh.
I wanted to ask you something.
Not only. Tell me something. You are advisor also to different, right?
Expert on terrorism.
Yes, to NATO and other bodies, yes.
Arie, you know, lately, because of the catastrophic events in Israel, everybody is trying to compare it to something, to the Holocaust, to 9/11, to ISIS, to pogroms. And I think that people are looking for words that they're beyond what they feel, and they try to find a sentiment that they can compare to. But it's not fair to any event, because each event has its own atrocities and the catastrophic feelings and outcome. How do you define what's going on now?
You know, Tzili, each event is unique. Each event is different, but at the same time, they share a common denominator. And in this particular case is people's inhumanity to other people. The possibility of slaughter, of pogroms, of rape, of cruelty, unprecedented cruelty. We've seen that in the Holocaust. We have seen it now. We have seen it throughout history, not only to Jews, and to a large extent to Jews, but also other genocides, the Armenian genocide, what happened in Rwanda. People are capable, and that's the common denominator. We as human beings are cursed species. We are capable of immense violence and aggression. And what's tragic and paradoxical about it is that the very same motivation that promotes aggression and violence is also responsible for the greatest human achievements in science, in the arts, in all domains of endeavor. And this is the motivation for dignity and for significance. You can gain significance by violence. Animals do it, little children do it, sophisticated nations do it by dominated other nations. But you can also gain significance by great achievements of science, of development, of in music, in the arts, and so on and so forth. However, in certain circumstances, because people feel that they're humiliated and they lose significance, a very primitive and primordial ways of regaining significance is through violence. We have seen it time and time again. If you look at the literature on aggression in psychology, it's primarily in response to humiliation. Let's take, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You can think that it's about land. You can think it's about material things. It is not. It's about dignity. The Palestinians were catastrophically, in their perception, humiliated by the establishment of the Nukba, of the establishment of the sense of Israel. They were, the Arabs were humiliated by the 6 Days War. They tried to regain significance through the Yom Kippur War, the 73 war, and they did. The Egyptians now have a museum, even though the war did not end well for the Egyptians. The very act of crossing the Suez and courageously attacking the Israelis is cause for great celebration for the Egyptians, and they have a whole museum. If you drive from the airport to the city of Cairo, there is a museum, and everybody is talking about it. And even right now, the basic humiliation of the Palestinians by the Israelis throughout the last decades is what pushes them to the resistance, to Hamas, makes them, choose for Hamas rather than for the Palestinian Authority, because Hamas represents more centrally, more essentially, the quest for significance. And it's a tragedy. We tried, Israelis tried, the world tried to appease the Palestinians through economic means. So, for example, Moshe Dayan, the famed Israeli chief of staff and minister of defense, tried to create a good economic situation for the Palestinians. If you remember, after the Six-Day War, he instituted the policy of open bridges that eliminated the green line between Israel and Judea and Samaria, and also allowed people from these regions, from the West Bank, to travel freely to Jordan in order to promote business and commerce and ability to find work. And that really promoted the economic welfare of the Palestinians. But at the same time, the Israeli settlement movement, the arrest of Palestinians, the jingoistic nationalistic statements by Israelis humiliated the Palestinians on a daily basis. And so the economics was not enough. And until the first Intifada in 87 happened, and that ended the economic welfare, that ended the open bridges, promoted the siege of Gaza, and so on and so forth. So, economic development can help, but not at the price of respect and of honor. And I think the Israeli policy has been humiliating Palestinians time and time again, and this cannot be done.
So how come there is not acknowledgement, but by any leaders of Israel who understand this basic thing that you're talking about? How come it didn't change the concept?
It's easy to ignore it when things seem to be okay. If you think that you can manage Hamas, it's just a question of mowing the lawn from time to time, taking care of little events on the border, and in the meantime, expanding Palestine and invoking messianic ideologies that the land belongs to us, was promised, and so on and so forth. When you do not pay a price, it's very easy to lull yourself into the assumption that things will be good and you can get away with murder. You can get away with humiliating the other side forever. So, it's the psychology of it. The whole thing is psychological. Psychology is at the root of the whole thing.
Yeah, but psychology also can, sharpen your understanding. So now 2 weeks ago, we know what happened. If this can change, if this can bring the awareness, is what you call this humiliation was so deep that caused to this, or justify what happened 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, but psychology works for few ways. Depends how you want to look at things and how you want to see things. You can manipulate the angles.
There are different psychologies. This psychology should awake the awareness that you cannot humiliate the Palestinians forever, and you must take into account their sense of dignity and honor. On the other hand, there is also the other side. Israel now was humiliated. Israel now is perceived as weak, and because there are many people who want to gain significance and dominance at the expense of Israel, this is encouraging of Israel, of these enemies in the Mideastern neighborhood. So I do not see that Israel can, very easily accept that, and that's why the talk about invading the Gaza Strip and all of that in order to reinstate the Israeli deterrence and also boost the morale of the Israelis, who feel now, beyond all the suffering, beyond all the cruelty, the Israelis feel extremely humiliated by what happened.
How come a feeling of humiliation? How can, well, you explained it. A feeling of humiliation can really bring out such violence.
Yes. Violence is the most primitive way of reasserting your power. This is the most primordial way of showing that you are strong, you are mighty. And Israel has lost a lot of it. Israel had this aura of invincible military force, the best in the world, people were saying. People were saying that the Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, is the best in the world. Now it's all in shambles, right? And if that myth was protecting Israel, was the deterrence. If that myth is shown to be in shambles and incorrect, that encourages all kinds of wolves on, Iran and Hezbollah and all the enemies of Israel to, take initiatives and try to do what they want, which is to annihilate Israel.
So what parts you think is in the Palestinian identity that they refuse to say we recognize the state of Israel? They keep saying we don't recognize. They keep saying we would like to kill you all. By the way, I heard Hitler saying it about Palestinians, but let's put it aside now because it's really, I don't know, in numbers. When and how can we shift the concept of let's throw Israel to the sea?
I think right now the only option is to fight Hamas. Unfortunately, it's a very complicated thing because it entails, if that invasion were to take place the way it was planned, many thousands of Palestinian lives would be lost. So that it's a paradoxical. We need to defeat Hamas to show that the violence does not pay, that it's not the way. And maybe that will awaken the Palestinian desire to see things differently. There are Palestinians who would be willing to, to think of a two-state solution and go toward a peaceful resolution along this, the lines of what happened in Oslo, and this way of thinking can be reinvigorated, can be reawakened. But on the other hand, if 10,000 Palestinians die in this conflict, it's going to be again a tit for tat, a kind of a spiral of vengeance, the kind of blood feud that doesn't end. So that's why the situation can be understood by psychologists, but what to do exactly, given this complicated paradox, psychological trap, it's very difficult.
But we are very careful not to call the extreme settlers that doing terror actions against the Palestinians, and we try to keep it clean as much as we can, but they do terror attacks as well, just much smaller sizes than
and every day.
And they attack the Palestinians on a regular basis, and they do terrible things.
Absolutely. And
how can we stop the humiliation? I mean, it's like they are not humiliated for nothing. I mean, there is reality that they live in that really cause these feelings. And we are, we cannot just say we are not part of it.
No, we are definitely part of it. The Israeli society is very much a part of it. Those who support the settlements, who have this ideology that this was given to us, and we are the chosen people, and God has given us this land, and it's all ours, and we don't have to care about anybody else. That ideology is what contributed a lot. And this is the Israeli pride, Israeli sense of significance. It's like Putin that wants Russia to be again the big Russian empire, like in the past. The same way the Israelis want to be the Israeli empire, or in India, the Modi idea of greater India. It's all based on this quest for significance, quest for greatness. We're going to be great, and the only way to show that it doesn't work is to pay the price. So maybe now the price will evoke in some people this idea, but in most people it evokes the idea of vengeance. Right. The Israelis were very divided, but after what happened in October 7th, everybody said, we now must destroy Hamas.
But
the left and the right.
Can you define between Palestinians and Hamas, or you put them all together? How do you explain that to people who have no clue what's going on?
Well, the Palestinians elected Hamas. So Hamas is not completely divorced from the Palestinians. Not all Palestinians are as committed to the destruction of Israel and to the Islamist ideology that it's the question of jihad, it's a religious duty imperative. But I think that most Palestinians are committed to the idea that Israel was humiliating them and resistance is important. For example, about close to 80% of the Palestinians were in favor of suicide attacks against the Israelis. These were polls of Shikaki and others. So, the Palestinians do support, who less, who more, the idea of resistance because they feel humiliated by the Israelis. And it's also a vicious circle to the extent that Israelis, for example, in Gaza, do not allow economic development. The only route for Palestinians to have honor and respect is through joining the resistance, to joining Hamas, because they use the unemployment in Gaza is on the average 50%. It's about 72% among women. Huge unemployment. There is no future for these youths. The only way, and the quest for significance, the need for significance and dignity is universal. So the only way for them to have dignity is to join the resistance.
So where do you see any solution? So for the short term, you say we have to beat Hamas, make sure they're out of the game, right?
Yes,
And
to show that, yes.
But a lot of what you're talking about is rooted. So if Hamas goes, the feeling of humiliation, how can you change that?
I think
Different regime even.
If Israelis had the political will to change their attitude and to show, that Churchill and others have coined the term in victory magnanimity. You've got to be generous in victory. Once you're victorious, that's the time, rather than humiliating the other side and inviting violence in return, vengeance, be magnanimous. And at that point, show understanding to their plight, understanding to their concerns, understanding to their honor, and give them, at that time, after defeating Hamas, if that were possible, dismantle settlements, get serious about a two-way solution. Israel could do that if there was a political will to do it. Of course, as we all know, we are disunited, and there is a very strong right-wing sentiment among Israelis. So, that's what should be done. Defeat them and then be magnanimous and recognize their concerns and be ready to make concessions. Give them what you can.
Can you radicalization?
Radicalization.
Of whole society?
Yes, whole society can be radicalized. Germany was radicalized in the 30s. Radicalization can occur right now. For example, the psychology of radicalization, the psychology of extremism, is that one motivation becomes so important, then everything else is cast aside, and you're willing to do anything to serve that motivation. So, for example, after 9/11, the idea of defeating Al-Qaeda was so important that anything was allowable, anything was legitimate, whether it was torture, the Patriot Act, anything was okay. And now, after the October 7 attack, everybody in Israel we've got to destroy Hamas. The first impulse was, forget everything else. Forget, that thousands of people are going to be killed. Forget the world opinion. Forget the possibility of Hezbollah and Iran getting involved. Forget everything. That this is extremism. Extremism is forgetting all else, forgetting all considerations and doing something that serves that motivation for revenge. Right now, after a while, it's very difficult.
We don't have a Churchill.
What?
We don't have a Churchill.
We don't even have an Arie Sharon. I don't know what we have right now. The trust in Israeli government and in Israeli armed forces is at the lowest point that I remember.
In a way, over the last few months, over a year, basically the government in Israel is terrorizing Israel and from within. And now you have the Hamas who terrorized Israel and beat the Israeli government, and now they're trying to terrorize us under the table, even more and worse. So basically we're stuck between all of them, and we cannot do anything to break it. It's a very cycle inside.
It's a very difficult situation. They talk about the invasion. It's been 2 weeks and there's been no invasion, because right now that original feeling, that momentum was slowed down by considerations. And now people are beginning to think, well, how good an idea it is, and the price be worth it. And so
and
it
those
looks
who are kidnapped, of course.
And of course, there are those who are kidnapped. Are we going to sacrifice them? At the beginning, people say we must,
right?
Go whatever the price. Now the focus is different.
But the problem is that on both sides, when people say we need to wipe them out, they mean it.
Yeah.
And this is not a solution. We know it, because we cannot wipe everybody out.
We cannot wipe everybody out, and the other side is going to reciprocate. So I think the idea is to break that cycle, that spiral of violence, and the only way it would be to show Hamas that this is not the way. Destroy Hamas if possible, and then start in earnest negotiations with the Palestinians. Show that the readiness of Israelis to dismantle the right-wing ideology and be serious about a two-state solution that would mean concessions, land concessions, and other concessions. That to me seems the only way. Otherwise, it will
continue. You think the two-state solution is still on?
It's bad.
Right now, it seems that it cannot happen.
It's not back at all.
No, people outside the world is pushing for it.
Outside world is pushing for it. The Israelis do not have the political will to get serious about it. I talked with a friend, and one possibility is if the invasion were to take place, there would be a huge catastrophe. Huge catastrophe, both on the Palestinian side and on the Israeli side, because Hezbollah will get involved, the militias from Iraq and Syria will get involved, the Houthis will get involved, maybe Iran will get involved. Thousands of Israelis will probably die. Gaza will be destroyed, and on the ashes,
it will be okay.
On the ashes of everything, the kind of the fascist movement and the Nazi movement that was prevalent in Germany stopped after the Second World War. This was just too much a price, and then Germany became committed to liberal democracy and to join the family of nations and so forth. It sometimes takes a great shock in which unfortunately to stop the process and to have a more enlightened view, because the way of aggression as a way to dominance is very tempting, and only an earthquake, a shock like occurred in Second World War, brought Japan and Italy and Germany to their senses and turned them into a liberal democracy. But right now, the lessons of the Second World War and the lessons that violence is disastrous are forgotten, and that aspect of the human nature that violence will bring you power and glory is awakening, and we are right back into that dynamic.
But all the examples you gave no, we have to go back because she just said this sentence on the side, and Bibi will go on. You know, he will outlast those everything we talk here, because you know, I can pause for a minute, and I just hope we don't lose the line. I am now also thinking about, and you're a professor, about the students and the campuses that goes out and demonstrate without really understanding what's going on, because there is no one to explain them. Because yesterday we had a meeting of all Tisch, the School of the Arts at NYU, the whole school, and I raised the question there. I didn't get an answer. What do we do with all these students now? Who, and I know Jewish students who are afraid now on campuses. There are many more, which is, you know, not say, but pro-Palestinians, which is okay if they really understand the complexity of the situation. And I don't know, we bring those young people to the best universities even, right? It can be Harvard, it can be Yale, whatever, Columbia. And they have so many, you know, enlightened students who go out to demonstrate. How can we reach them? I don't know if we can reach them with a smaller population, right, than to reach the Palestinians and the Israelis to understand what you're talking about. What can we do? It's in our backyard.
It is terrible. It is terrible. The progressive left is having this sentiment, siding with the underdog, siding with the humanitarian aspect, and forgetting what caused this particular bout of events. So, you know, it's easy to say, stop the bombing, because thousands of people are being killed, and seeing Israel as the aggressor, which at this point it is. But what caused it, you know, is being forgotten. And this is in the context of the larger idea that Israel has been occupying the Palestinians and humiliating the Palestinians for the last 50 years. So, you know, that particular sentiment right now is in the context of this larger attitude that Israel has been an aggressive power. To explain this event without changing the whole conception is very, very difficult. We must do what we can to show that this is a reaction, and the only way that Israel can defend itself is to restore its deterrence. But whether this will be effective, we can do, you know, we can try by social media, by meetings, by writing, by explaining as much as we can. But you cannot explain the killing of you know, thousands of people in Gaza. That cannot be explained.
Are you ready to put the line?
Although it happened in Afghanistan, it happened in Iraq when Americans were doing that. You know, that the Americans were not that concerned about human lives. But now it's easy to be very humanitarian when it's other people.
It's
And
much
especially
easier to be right when somebody else is doing something. But where do you put the line between the freedom of speech and the right thing to say at the right time?
Yeah, it's again, you know, there is no clear line. Freedom of speech is at odds, inconsistent with the idea of hate speech. So, you know, if hate speech is forbidden, that means the restriction on the freedom of speech. And what exactly is hate speech? It's very vaguely defined, and
yeah, the borders are not clear, you know.
Especially when the hate speech serves your political agenda, where you really feel that you know, Israel was at fault and Israel was the aggressor, then you're more forgiving to hate speech that's condemning Israel and condemning the Jews.
Can you take us somehow along with what's going on now from your experience to tell us how it's going to continue, evolve?
I think there are two scenarios. One is the catastrophic scenario that Israel will do what it was promising to do. It
Yeah.
will totally destroy Gaza. It will destroy Hamas.
It will destroy Israel too.
This will destroy Israel too, because Hezbollah will definitely, in my opinion, get involved, and there'll be missiles. Now,
All over, yeah.
and the United States, this is almost an election year.
Yeah.
The Democrats, especially the progressive part of Democrats, are against the invasion.
Yeah.
Biden is up for re-election. He has to listen to what his party is saying. So the aid to Israel, although he originally stood up for Israel, but that's going to also the
You
political.
can stand up to Israel and not support the invasion.
Yes, yes, but at the beginning he was supportive of destruction of Hamas, and Israel has to do what it has to do, and that's going to change with the pressure from not only the public but the democratic voters,
Right.
which matter to him a lot. So it's going to be a catastrophe, and on the ashes of that catastrophe, there could be a new world order in the Middle East. The other more likely scenario is that despite all the pronouncements, Israel will do a limited operation in Gaza.
Like they did today. They went in a very limited way,
Exactly, to the
very
north.
specific target, and came out.
Yes.
And killed one of the Hamas.
Yes, leaders. Yes. And that's the way it's going to be. Hamas will pay a price, but not a complete price, and things will continue.
So nothing will change except
nothing will change. Hopefully, this will change something in Israel. Hopefully, this will change. I mean, not only the arrogant conception that the Arabs want now, the Hamas wants good governance and wants the economy, which was a very wishful thinking kind of conception on which we froze, and that was responsible. So this was a great failure of intelligence and of readiness. I hope that this is going to change. It was the same thing in Yom Kippur, the freezing on a conception. So let's hope that this.
But I want to believe that in Yom Kippur the government cared more for the soldiers or the citizens than this government.
I don't know. That's quite strong.
Yeah.
Back then they didn't care, you said?
No.
Now. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. Back then they cared more. Now they don't care. I don't think they do.
I don't think I should ask this question. Should I take my kids and grandchildren out? If you say the Hezbollah is going to enter, talking about 100,000 missiles all over Israel, should I take my kids and grandchildren? You have kids and grandchildren there.
We do. It's
come to the doorstep. I have a ticket to go back in 1 month.
We all have our personal identity and our social identity. Our social identities, we are Israelis. Our son-in-law is in the SEALs, Shayatet 13. I don't think that they'll contemplate leaving Israel because their social identity as Israelis. Right. If everybody left, there will be no Israel, and if there's no Israel, Jews all over the world will suffer. So, there is our private lives, and
I don't know even how I asked this question, but
it's a decision between your private life. You live only once. You want your grandchildren and your children to be safe. On the other hand,
Israel is like,
on the other hand, if we all thought in terms of our private lives, there will be no collective.
Right.
Any minister from the current government in Israel have asked your advice?
No.
Listen to you?
No.
No, huh?
Nobody listens to me. Even my wife.
We should send this.
My wife
does parliament member.
They're too busy to changing the rules and to change the whole thing.
Yeah. How can they operate now logically if they're worried what will be after? How can you keep
But that's why it looks like this.
Yeah, well, I hope that they know what they are doing, although it looks like they don't.
They don't.
There's a chaos and confusion on all levels of government. I hope that at least the military knows what they're doing, but I'm not sure about that either.
Right. I think we should stop here. It's so
We
depressing.
don't have a happy note to stop on, unfortunately.
Terrible. It's terrible.
There is anything you think we should ask you more than we didn't?
You asked me a lot. You asked me more than you should have. We touched on some very touchy topics, but yeah, no, it
I
was
never thought that I will ask this question. Should I take out my where I'm going to go? I will go. I will go there, and I will bring my kids here. I think, right? Yeah. So
Arie, for better days.
yeah.
Thank you.
We'll call you again when the
Tzipi,
time will
thank you.
come to plan the
And
future.
everybody, see you next week.
Bye bye. Thank you so
Okay.
much,
Take
everybody.
care.